Welcome back to the Mama Podcast. Today's episode is a sensitive one and a really important one. Heidi is speaking with Emma, who shares her experience of infertility and pregnancy loss, including TFMR, Termination for Medical Reasons, following a diagnosis of Edwards syndrome. This conversation may be hard to listen to if you've experienced baby loss, fertility treatment, or a difficult pregnancy journey. So please take care of yourself and pause whenever you need to, or simply come back for our next episode. We're sharing Emma's story with the hope it brings understanding, compassion, and better support for families, and helps professionals reflect on how care and language can make such a difference. If you need support after listening, we'll share helpful resources in the show notes. Thank you for being here.
So welcome to this episode of the Mama Podcast. I'm Heidi Eldridge, the founder and CEO of Mama Academy. Thank you so much, Emma, for joining us today and, sharing your story with everyone to help raise awareness. It's going to help so many people. So would you like to start by introducing yourself to whoever's listening today? Maybe not mention the temperature because I know it's probably considerably warmer where you
quite
are
nice.
than where it is here.
Yeah, it's quite nice here. So I'm Emma. I'm 44 now, and I'm from Brighton in the UK, but I now live in Dubai, and we've had quite a journey to becoming parents. We went through years of infertility and many rounds, and our family consists of two daughters, one living and one that I lost in utero, but we'll go on to talk about that in a minute.
Of course. So how old is your daughter now?
So my living daughter has just turned 3.
Oh, wow. Okay. So very busy in your household then.
Yeah, very busy in our household. So we had her after going through infertility treatments we started our fertility treatments in 2019, and we had her at the end of 2022, finally, after 9 rounds of fertility treatment and 2 losses. First was an early loss, and the second was with our first daughter, Willow, who had Edwards syndrome and was diagnosed with Edwards syndrome in utero, and I lost her at the beginning of my second trimester.
Okay, I'm so sorry to hear that. So I know that you're here today to talk to us about Willow.
Yes.
And exactly what happened.
Yes.
Because we talk about TFMR,
Yeah.
which is termination for medical reasons.
Yes.
Do you want to take us through that time and what it was like to experience that with Willow?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, TFMR has kind of become an abbreviation which is helpful for defining the difference of this type of baby loss. And it's a quick acronym to kind of identify safe spaces where you can get help and advice. But the unabbreviated version is termination for medical reasons or termination for maternal health of the birthing person. So TFMR can be for the health of the carrier or the health of the baby. So TFMR has kind of become this kind of abbreviated term for anybody that loses their baby loss for these reasons during a pregnancy. And it can happen the first trimester, the second trimester, and the third trimester of pregnancy, depending on the severity of the condition for the person carrying the baby or the baby itself. And it's just important to note that, and it can be for terminal reasons for the mother or the carrier or the baby, or it can be for a grave diagnosis, so severe medical impairment and needs for the child, or the medical health condition of the carrier could actually become critical and leave them with serious health conditions potential heart failure, lots of different things. There's lots of different reasons why somebody could end up in the space that I've ended up in. My personal story was for the health of our baby. And after all of these rounds of treatment, I think it was our 5th round of treatment with Willow, we had a first round of fertility treatment, I got pregnant, had a loss. Then it was a failed round, and then pregnant with Willow. So it was a very anxious pregnancy, very anxious first trimester, going to the toilet, checking for blood, you know, constantly worried that I was going to have a miscarriage. And weirdly, I thought, it's funny how you throw at least at yourself, but you never want someone to throw them at you. Anyway, but you do this to yourself, right? So I would say to myself, well, at least if I'm going to have a miscarriage, I'll know about it, because I'll go to the toilet, there'll be some evidence of that. So I'll know it's happening to me. So my fear became a miscarriage, because I kept thinking that could happen and I wouldn't even know necessarily. So every time we went for a scan, because we've gone through fertility treatment, we were going for early scans and everything seemed to be going well. So every time I went into a scan, the first question I would ask, because I'm sure lots of people can relate to who've had any type of anxious pregnancy, is there a heartbeat? That's the first thing you want to know. Go for a scan, is there a heartbeat? So every time after the first fetal pulse was taken, is there a heartbeat? Yes, everything's okay. Instant relief. And that's kind of as far as I know now many others are thinking in that stage of pregnancy, unless you've experienced something else that might make you think differently. So you think heartbeat, everything's good. So this is what we did, and we kept going to scans. Anyway, I think I got to I was just under 11 weeks pregnant and went for another scan. Every time I'm holding my breath, convinced they were going to tell me I'd had a miscarriage, because I just couldn't believe that it could be okay. And then my doctor said to me, because of your age, so I was 39 at the time, this is 2020, I was pregnant with Willow. Because of your age, we recommend you have an NIPT test. I didn't think anything of it. It was just kind of given to me as like this routine thing, because of my advanced maternal age, that it would be a sensible thing to do. I was most excited about finding out the sex of the baby, because I know that test also gives you that information. So I'm waiting for this test to come back, and it was taking longer than they said it might. And I then one Saturday got really anxious, and I went in and I just said, you know, I need to have a reassurance scan, because I'm just convinced that the baby's heart stopped. Or so anyway, I went in, they started doing a scan, and the heartbeat came on, and I looked up on the screen, and our baby was like kicking their arms and legs about and moving and rolling around, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, like everything is okay, it's okay. And I happened to be being scanned in Dubai. You get scanned by consultants or fetal medicine people. You don't get scanned by nurses here. Because of that reason, and she was a fetal medicine consultant, she saw on the screen something she wasn't happy with. And she very quickly said to me and my husband, I can't not tell you what I'm seeing. Even though I wasn't there for the big scan, the big NT scan, I was just there for a reassurance scan. With that, I just suddenly turned around. My husband had his hands in his head in his hands, and I just thought, oh God, what's going on here? Because I'm still hearing the heartbeat. I'm still watching our baby move. I'm thinking, well, what on earth? She said, there's something wrong with your baby. And I'm like, what do you mean? So at this point, by the time I went for the scan, I think I was just under 13 weeks pregnant at this point. So she said, I can see a lot of fluid around your baby. I can see, I think, a cystic hygroma on your baby's head, which is nearly as big as your baby's head. And I really need to do the full NT scan for you now. And it's going to take about an hour. I'm going to clear my diary, go and get yourselves a drink. like a cup of tea or something. Let me clear my diary, come back, and I'll clear an hour so I can do this full scan for you. So she went from being only able to see me for a couple of minutes for a reassurance scan and squeezing me in, to cancelling some patients and booking an hour to do this detailed scan. So she then did, we did this, we went over the road. I can't even really remember properly what happened. I think I was pushing a cup of tea around on the table or something. I've just no idea. So went back over and she started the scanning, and Willow had a big cystic hygroma on her head, which was as big as her head. She had fluid all over her abdomen and all over her chest. She appeared to have clenched fists and something going on with her feet also. And she's kind of telling me all this stuff. She was checking all the other aspects, like the heart looked okay, other bits looked okay. But the bottom line was, she just said to me, "You've got a very poorly baby." She said, "I can't tell exactly what this is right now. I think it might be either Pato syndrome or Turner syndrome, but until we get the genetic testing back, I won't know." She looked on the system because it was part of the same hospital group, and our results still weren't back. Should we have to wait for those to come back? And but at the end of it, she sat me down and she just said, "Because of the amount of fluid around your baby, don't think you will make it to term. I think your baby will die inside of you by about 28 weeks pregnant." So at this point, we're sitting on opposite her, and she's saying, I remember looking at her and saying, "Well, what does this even mean? Like, what do people do in this situation?" And she said, "Well, people will come back in each week and keep being scanned to see if their baby's heart is still beating. And then if or when the baby's heart stops beating, we then induce them." So I said, "So I wait for the baby to die inside me and then I have a stillbirth? Is that what you're telling me?" She said, "Yes, that does happen. Or by some miracle, the baby makes it to term and the birth itself is enough for the baby to die during birth because of all the pressure, because of all these things that are going on with the baby. Or the baby, by some miracle, you make it to birth, the baby's born, but they only live a few hours or days, and then they die. And in some really, really, really rare cases, they live a little while, but their lives are normally much, much shorter than you would ever want or expect for a child." So this is the information we were being delivered across the desk. And it was just a surreal time, because I just remember thinking, how on earth have we gone through all of this? We've had a loss already, we've gone through all this treatment, and how can this be happening? And go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, it's just so unfair, isn't it, when you've gone through all that
Yeah.
already? So unfair.
Yeah. And then she said, she said, "And other people do decide to bring their pregnancy to an end." So I looked at her and I don't think I'd really computed, and I was just like, "So you mean, a termination, to terminate the pregnancy?" And she said, "Yes. So these are the options, and I said, "And there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do in utero, through my abdomen to correct anything that's going on?" Or she said, "If it's genetic, no." Now, if it was something mechanical, or then in some cases, there are things that can be done for babies in utero or straight after they're born, and even then, not always. She said, "But we really need to wait for these genetic results to come back." So this is the information. And we walked out of the hospital knowing that we had to wait for these genetic results to come back. And basically, I remember texting my friend and saying, "I never thought at this stage in my pregnancy, I would be Googling how late can I have a termination. Like, How, you know, what does that even look like? How does this, you know, where can you have it done? Number one, how, who would do it? What does it look like? What, you know, how am I sitting here after being so desperately wanting to be pregnant? We had no living children at the time, and I'm now considering choosing, in air quotes, to terminate my pregnancy and bring it to an end. Just blows my mind still. So anyway, this was our reality, it is our reality. So we then waited for the genetic results to come back. They actually came back quite quickly a couple of days later, because I'd done the test at 10 weeks, and by this point I was nearly 13 weeks. But that's also one of the reasons why the test was taking longer to come back, because they had found something. So then it can take a little longer because it wasn't clear, which I know now. And the results came back, and it was, you know, almost undeniably Edward syndrome. So the result that came back. So this is it. So we were given this information. We also knew that because of all the fluid around her abdomen, that her heart would likely give up because of all the pressure in utero. So the likelihood of making it to term wasn't high. And that would leave me basically coming back in every week to see if my baby had died or not, week on week on week on week on week, and then having a stillbirth at some point. So it just felt like, when would the baby die? And we had to take that decision. And there was also the part of us that knew we wanted to have a living child. We didn't have any living children already. I was 39, about to be 40. And if I allowed myself to continue and had a stillbirth much later on, what would my recovery look like? When would we next be able to try to have a hopefully healthy living child? Would carrying on scupper our chances of ever having living children? That was also going through my mind. If I carry on with this pregnancy, do I then rob us of a chance of having a living child ever? There was lots of things that came into it. So anyway, in the end, we took the decision to end the pregnancy. We flew back to London, which was also a really difficult time because it was the end of 2020, and it was in the middle of that second lockdown that you had. So we had to get like special letters and stuff to travel under medical grounds to the UK to have treatment. Because of that, because I wasn't in the system as such in the UK, and I didn't want to be awake when we ended our pregnancy because I felt like I couldn't handle that. I got forwarded to a termination clinic in the UK for our care, and they told me that because of COVID and everything, Gareth, my partner, wouldn't be able to be with me and wouldn't be able to be with me when I woke up. And when I woke up, I would then be expected to get myself dressed, ready, into the office, where they would give me a non-see-through container with my baby in it to take to a funeral director's myself, to manage myself in a tub. So all of this, that was the point where I totally lost it, when I said, so this is basically what you're telling me I'll have to do. So I had to ring that clinic myself, and the woman kept saying to me, so you want to have an abortion? I said, no, I don't want to have an abortion. I've got a very sick baby. I don't want to be ringing you at all. So you want to book in for an abortion? I said, no, I don't want to book in for an abortion. Just so stressful, so upsetting.
Terminology is so important, isn't it, from healthcare professionals?
It was so stressful. Yeah. And I just remember it being in the phone, hysterical, almost screaming at her down the phone, I don't want to book an abortion. No, I don't want to be doing this. No, I don't. She kept going, okay, so let's book in your abortion then. Like I was just booking in for a restaurant reservation. It was so upsetting. And And then I got past that. The nurse then called me back, who was very different. So that was obviously their admin staff. The nurse spoke to me completely differently, actually, was very kind. But that first barrier was very distressing. And that's when I then got told about what would happen, because I said, I'd like to have our baby cremated. I'd like to have their ashes. I'd like to be able to take that back to Dubai with me. Okay, well, we'll be able to put them in a container for you. And when you wake up, you'll come through and we'll give you that before you leave when you're discharged. I said, and when will my husband see me? Oh, well, he'll have to be outside. I said, so let me get this straight. I'm going to wake up, get myself dressed, go to the discharge office, whatever that looks like. You're going to give me a tub with my baby in it. And then I'm going to step out onto the street. And that's the first time I'm going to see my husband with a pot with my dead baby in it. Yes. I was like, okay, I don't think I can do this. So luckily, our wedding got cancelled at the beginning of 2020. We were going to go and get married in Vegas. And because of COVID, our wedding got cancelled. So they refunded us our money. And that money came in the same month, like 3 weeks before I found out all of this bad news. So we used that money to pay to go to the Portland in London privately to have our termination for medical reasons. And we spent our wedding money on saying goodbye to Willow, and they looked after us beautifully. They cared for us beautifully. Gareth was allowed to be with me. They took care of our daughter's remains. They liaised with the funeral home. They arranged everything for me and just took care of me. And I'm grateful our wedding got cancelled. So, yeah, so that's how it all went down in the end. And it's just not easy. It's like the minute you get news like that, you tend to have to do a lot of fending for yourself and a lot of advocating for yourself at a time when you haven't really got the capacity to do it. So it's very difficult.
Absolutely. Gosh, I'm so sorry that you've been through all that. I mean, that's just absolutely awful. And especially during COVID, when there was more complications to navigate. And it shows you, how much care and empathy, especially bereavement care, can make such a difference to someone, because it's so traumatic in itself, that it's even more, it adds to all that stress and, well, PTSD and everything else, doesn't it, when you're not looked after properly.
Yeah.
So well done to the Portland. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible that you managed to have that experience and that opportunity.
Yeah.
And what other support really helped you through at that time?
So during the whole process of receiving the bad news, antenatal results and choices are incredible, and they are the only designated charity in the UK that support for this specific reason during antenatal. So it's called antenatal results and choices for a reason. So they support no matter your choice, no matter what pathway you go down. But if you receive any difficult news in pregnancy about your health or your baby's health, then they are the people to call. And they were very helpful, and they did everything they could, and helped me to just feel confident that I was doing the best I could for my family at that time, in a very non-judgmental way, which is exactly what you need, but very calm and sort of solid. And then after that, I was sharing everything real time on social media as this was all going on, because I was sharing real time my fertility story from our third round. So as this started happening, I just continued. I didn't even think about it. It wasn't like a choice. Because I'd already been sharing everything every day, I just continued. And what happened is I got an influx of hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world messaging me saying, thank you for talking about this so openly. This happened to me 10 years ago. I've never told a soul. I've never told anyone. If I told my family or my community, some people, I would be totally sort of outed. I'd be disowned by my family or my community as I know them. That's not my story, right? I have the privilege of being able to speak my truth without any fear of other aspects of my life changing, and I sit in a privileged position to be able to do so. That's not everybody's story, which is why I feel it's so important that if you do have that and you're able and you have the capacity, then share, because some people aren't safe to share. I am, and it helps other people. I know it does. So I would get in so many messages, and at the time I was running support groups for women who were going through sexual trauma recovery. So I would, as a peer-to-peer support, I would host Zoom groups with other women, and I then tried to find a group like I was running, but for TFMR, and I couldn't find it. I could find forums, I could find chat kind of notice boards online and baby group and things like that. But I couldn't find like a place where you had like an intimate group of other people like you all coming together from all different walks of life, maybe 4 to 6 of you, where you just helped each other through a really tough time. And that's what I was doing in another field. And I kind of realized that TFMR is all trauma work and grief work and shock, dealing with the shock of everything, which was very similar. So I kept thinking, I think the type of groups that I run would work for other people, like the type of thing, the tools that we talk about, I think would help other people. So put out a message on my group and I said, you know, if anyone would like to have a Zoom chat who's been in a similar place, let me know. Anyway, I had about 30 to 35 people reply literally instantly. So I set up 5 or 6 groups and I ran them over like 4 weeks, just on a really casual basis. And everybody just found huge benefit from it. But then it got too big for me because I was still going through all my own stuff, right? I was going through all my own stuff. And so I then started posting all the same things that I've been posting on my personal page, but on TFMR Mamas. I set up a separate page because I thought I can't have it just be Emma. And, you know, I was exhausted because I was so heartbroken myself. So I set up TFMR Mamas and I just used to post little quotes as little quotes on that page, and people found it helpful, and it's just grown. And then I think about 7 months later, I realized that it had thousands of people following it, and I just thought, this is bigger than me now, so it needs to become a vehicle to help people. So I set it up as a not-for-profit, and it's been now running for 4 years. We've set up a TFMR Awareness Day, which is a global awareness day, and that's it. That's the story.
Wow, that's incredible. So again, you've been able to, you know, turn your tragedy and pain into hope and support for others, which is just amazing. I mean, you obviously helped so many other people. And when you're talking to people, what would you say are sort of the most misconceptions that people want to try and dispel? Because, you know, TFMR has such a stigma to it. What do you think they would want to say?
I think what's important to know is that unless you are that person in that room with your medical professional, you don't actually know what you would do. And the reason I say that is because I have people who are registered with TFMR Mamas. I think we've got about 3,000 people registered with us now from all over. And some people, I've got people that have had multiple TFMRs, and I've got some people who got a diagnosis with one pregnancy and decided to continue. And then in a subsequent pregnancy, got a diagnosis and decided to have a TFMR. So that's the same person, essentially in the same position twice, making 2 very different decisions. I've then got people who had a TFMR the first time and decided to continue on the second time when they got a difficult diagnosis. So what that proves to me is, unless it's you at that point in your life, with the resources you've got, the support you've got, the community you've got, the social standing you've got at that time, you don't actually know what you would decide. So I think it's just important that we trust parents that they are really doing their very best for their family, whatever that looks like. And just because it's not what you would do doesn't mean that someone else shouldn't do it. And also, just because, you know, you think that you would do something, I've got people who are registered with me who've been brought up in other countries, who've been brought up very pro-life, let's say anti-choice, because pro-life would mean you're pro-life of the carrier or the baby if you were truly pro-life. So let's say anti-choice because they're only on one choice, which is you carry on whatever, who have arrived into my space having had a TFMR at the age of 30 something. They spent their entire life with one choice on the table, which is to never terminate a pregnancy. And they arrive in this space. And I have to say, I have the biggest amount of compassion for those people, because not only have they just lost their baby, but they are now having to work through and undo a lifetime of beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's an awful lot of work to unpack when you're postpartum, grieving, in shock, got PTSD, probably been treated terribly one way or another somewhere along that process. I feel deeply for them, because I actually think they need the most compassion, because they have so much to do at such a difficult time. And the other thing is that every person I've ever met, every parent in this space, I have met the most loving, the most compassionate, the most caring parents in this space. And I know that their decisions have come from a place of love, always. And I think that's probably the most important message.
Absolutely. And in terms of the healthcare professionals, whether that's midwives, consultants, sonographers, what would you like them to learn, especially in terms of care?
Yeah, I think if anybody is wanting to go into a medical or healthcare profession where they are interacting with anybody in the maternal or antenatal space, I think the best advice I could give you is take yourself on a bereavement course, because there's so much grief involved with maternity care, whether babies live or they don't live. If someone has a traumatic birth, I guarantee the woman you speak, and they have a living child at the end of it, I guarantee that mother, that carrier, the birthing person, will still be feeling grief for something they feel they've lost on their journey to having their living child. So I think my best recommendation is every single one of them should go into a bereavement course and learn how to do bereavement care, because having a family or trying to have a family is not easy. And I guarantee every single parent's got some grief in their story somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spoke earlier about, you know, the difference good care can make. Really, really can help you and help you start the healing and recovery process. So I'm just thinking, if you are a friend or family member of someone that is having to experience this and go through this, what advice would you give them to be able to support their loved one?
Again, read up on how to support someone who's grieving. Meet that person where they're at. Please don't try and hurry people through their grief. It doesn't work anyway. All that happens is it causes a massive disconnect. So if you're looking to stay connected to your person that you care about, the absolute worst thing you can do is try and hurry them through their grief, because all they will do is think you're no longer a safe person to talk to. And then you won't get the authentic version of them. And that leads to you being disconnected from the person you care about. So meet them where they're at. Don't try and hurry them.
That's so true. We've got a baby loss section on our website, actually, and that's got how to support a friend on there, how to support colleagues, etc. So that will be helpful for people to read. But yeah, you're right. I think sometimes people want to try and give a little bit of hope or look to the future, and so they do end up sort of hurrying people along. They can say things like, oh well, at least it was early on, or at least you're young and can have another baby, or at least you've got another child, or you know, and they're just the worst things. So you're right, it's just, I mean, for me, when I lost my son, someone from church literally just turned up and sat on my living room floor. They didn't even sit on the sofa, they just sat on the living room floor and just said, I'm here, I'm with you. And they sobbed. They weren't frightened of crying in front of us, and this was a 50-year-old man, but he just sobbed for us, and just said, I feel your pain. And that meant the world. I've never forgotten that. And that's all you need, isn't it? Just to feel like you're not alone, that someone's journeying with you, and they're just there. And if you want to rant, you're there to rant. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it. But it's, what do you need right now? What is it that I can help with? Do you want me to come and do the hoovering? Whatever's going to help. I'm here.
And I think it's like, I think people over medicalize grief. Like, they make it out that it's something you've got to get better from. You're not sick. Like, you haven't got caught a bug or virus. And I think that's where grief is deeply misunderstood. People see it's something they've got to get you better from. Well, I'm not sick. There's a difference. And it's, if someone can just get comfortable with being uncomfortable about the fact that you can't just get better from grief, people learn how to live with grief. Grief to me is like the flatmate you never wanted, right? They just move on in, they do loads of stuff, I won't swear, but loads of stuff that you just don't like, right? But yet they're stuck here, they're not moving out. They're the flatmate you didn't want. They do loads of really annoying, they come when you don't want them to, they come at really awkward times, when it's not convenient, just when you think you've got everything together, they come in and smash up the flat. Like, this is grief, this is what happens. And you just have to learn how to live with it. So the thing that I say to people is, the best thing you can do is befriend it, befriend grief, respect that grief now lives within you and might appear at the most inconvenient of times, but just to go, oh, okay, you're here, you're visiting me. And if you can accept that and learn to live alongside grief rather than trying to better yourself from grief, I think that's a softer place to land when you're trying to navigate the fact that it's there. You can't just ignore it. You can't just erase it, make it all go away. It doesn't work like that.
It's acceptance, isn't it? Because you've got the initial shock, and suddenly, you're having to do things that you never thought you'd have to do. You've got to tell other people, and then you have to find an acceptance that this has happened, and that's very, very hard. But obviously that is part of the healing process. So what does healing look like for you now? Because we're obviously sort of 5 years later, you've now got another daughter. What's healing like for you now?
I mean, I think it is kind of just what I was just saying, is just learning to live with, because having my living daughter actually brought up huge parts of grief for me afterwards. The enormity of everything that we would never had was sitting in front of me as this gurgling, crawling, walking, real life example. And that brought up waves of grief for me I was definitely not expecting. And now, still living with infertility, having, just gone through a failed transfer 2 months ago, I am always looking there thinking I could have a 4-year-old, like a few months ago when I had that failed transfer, I could have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old right now. And that would be what we had always envisaged, 2 living children a couple of years apart. So there's huge amounts of grief that still come. They just look different. It's not that raw, in the fire grief at the beginning. that's so overwhelming that it's almost debilitating. It's not that, but it's these kind of slow, heavy waves that appear from time to time, triggered by our living daughter often. So then you have this beautiful gratitude of her existence with a crashing wave of grief of not having Willow all happening concurrently. It's just learning to hold two truths at the same time is probably the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, so I guess it's accepting that these waves are going to come. There are going to be triggers. There are going to be certain dates.
Just a quick note as we come to a close. We had a small technical issue right at the end of this recording, but we didn't want that to stop you hearing Emma's conversation with Heidi in full up to this point. We're incredibly grateful to Emma for sharing her experience and for speaking with such honesty and care. If this episode has brought up anything for you, please take things gently after you finish listening. Support is available and you don't have to hold this on your own. We've added trusted links in the show notes, as well as Emma's organisation and wider baby loss support. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back with you in the next episode of the Mama Podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, share it with a friend or colleague. Make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on our next episode. If you'd like to support our work by fundraising or volunteering, please email contact@mamaacademy.org.uk. For more information on pregnancy and maternity services, please visit our website at www.mamaacademy.org.uk. We're also on all of your favourite social media channels. See you next time!